Good evening. My name is James Patterson, Commissioner Patterson, and I chair the Audit Committee. I would like to call the Audit Committee meeting of the whole to order. It appears that there are no speakers to address the Audit Committee at this point in time. Let's see. Moving on to the third bullet. Review and acceptance of the minutes. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the March 7th Audit Committee meeting?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Malloy, seconded by Commissioner Powell, excuse me. All right. Can we have a verbal vote?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Any discussion? The ayes have it. Online voting is now available.
Madam Clerk, I haven't quite finished logging in, so if you want to cast a yes vote for me. I'll be there in just another second.
Yes, because I'm still logging on.
Do you want me to wait a minute? Do you want me to wait a minute or proceed? Okay. All right, item number 4, resolution consideration. We need to consider resolution 727 for suspension appeals. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Vice President LeBron, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any discussion?
I think we call for discussion prior. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, shoot. I was using this one. I use my laptop. Okay. Right,
Votes
moving-
recorded, 4-1. Motion passed.
Moving along to item number 5, I would like to, at this point in time, regarding the Audit Committee discussion items, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our Auditor General, Mrs. Henry Wheeler, to facilitate the discussion items involving Drescher and Malicki. It's a financial audit plan for the year ending June 30th, 2023, and the 2023 Drescher and Malicki Financial Audit Plan Resolution Number 2022-23, 728.
This evening, we'd like to welcome Drescher and Malecki, our new external auditors for the Rochester City School District. We just completed an RFP process, and as required by Education Law 2116C, we are required to go over the audit plan. So if you would just go ahead and get started.
This is what your appeal is abstaining. No, I don't want to say one.
Okay.
Let me see if I can fix that.
All right. How is everyone? Good to meet you.
evening.
I'm Matt Montalvo from Drescher Malecki. I'll be the partner on the audit engagement. We're here, as new auditors to the district, so we wanted to bring some key members of the audit team with me today to introduce them, and as well as the whole audit team. With me is Corey Svensson-Scoble. She'll be the audit manager on the engagement. And then I also have with me Schwartz Abelard, who will be the in-charge auditor and also focused on the compliance specialist side. As far as the other audit members, we have Amy Barker, who's a senior auditor, also a CPA, and Will Brinkerhoff as a staff member. And we'll bring on other staff members as needed. The one thing about Drescher Malecki, we are a fully governmental audit firm. So all of the staff members will be government auditors and have experience on large city school districts or other government entities. So as far as the products of our audit, these are essentially what you hire us for. These are the final deliverables, the final opinions that we provide as an independent third party to the district. So the primary report or opinion is on the district's financial statements and the annual comprehensive financial report, or the ACFR is the acronym, for the district's year ended June 30th, 2023. That is where we provide an opinion that your financial statements either fairly represent your financial position, so you can rely upon them in making important district financial decisions. That's obviously the opinion that you're looking for from the audit standpoint. We also issue an opinion on your internal controls over your financial reporting and compliance. That's in accordance with government auditing standards. We also issue a report or opinion on your major federal programs. So this has become increasingly important over the last 3 to 4 years after the pandemic relief funds started to trickle into school districts and government entities. So this is an area that Schwartz is very knowledgeable in as a compliance specialist. There's a significant amount of time and attention in that area to provide that report on your major federal programs. We also issue an opinion on the district's extra classroom activity funds. This is a cash-based audit, so we look at the receipts and the disbursements of those extra classroom activity clubs and provide an opinion on that as well. And then finally, as far as letter communications, there's an auditor communication letter and a management letter. These would highlight any significant items from the audit, as well as any best practices or recommendations that we would provide the district. And then finally, we also look at your compliance for the contract for excellence. That's an agreed upon procedures report that we issue as far as opining on your compliance. Moving on to the overall audit strategy. So being that this is our first year with the district, the first 2 bullet items are really the most significant from our perspective and the most time investment. This is really getting to know the district. So it starts with this meeting, getting any concerns from the audit committee or the board on specific areas of concern that could impact the audit. We're also going to talk about some areas we identified as potentially risky areas for the audit plan. So we talk about audit planning, we talk about the scope of the work, areas of concern, but from our perspective, the biggest piece is getting in here, gaining an understanding about Rochester City School District. So your financial operations, how the processes work, what individuals are involved, and that really sets the stage for how we assess where the risky areas are and where we focus most of our audit attention. So once we identify those and assess those, we design our process and our procedures over the audit to respond to those risks. We also perform substantive testing. So this is the testing of your account balances, your cash balances, your accounts receivables. We'll go through those a little bit more in detail later on. And then we will assist in preparing your financial reports for compilation and draft audit opinions, and then meet back with management and this group to discuss the audit results and any recommendations we have for the audit. Any questions on the overall strategy? Yes.
So you mentioned contract for excellence, compliance. So for very many years, there was no increase in funding, so the state, I don't think, really held us to the same expectations for reporting on the portion that was supposed to be on new spending. Do we anticipate that being different this year because we're now fully funded?
As far as the compliance and the agreed upon procedures report that's required, it's pretty standard steps from our perspective. So they lay out a specific set of standards that will address all of those items. So it doesn't necessarily depend on, whether you're fully funded or not.
Does that include the, I'm not sure if it's a letter, but a statement of compliance from the city that they're meeting the, what's the term I'm thinking of? The maintenance of effort?
Correct, yes.
So you'll be interfacing with the city to make sure that that happens?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and many components of the audit there'll have to be some correspondence with the city. It's just the nature of the relationship between the city of Rochester and the school district. We're actually performing, not this audit team, but we're performing the audit of the city of Buffalo and with the connecting school district. So we're kind of dealing with a lot of the same issues at the same time.
Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Vice President LeBrun.
Thank you. The only question I have is sort of related to the relationship with the city. In your plan, I'm trying to go back to that slide, your strategy. The only thing I would personally like to see, but I'm sure my fellow commissioners would agree, is actually meeting with the city's auditors, because this has been a point of contention for the city, because historically we've always selected these same auditors. And I've said this before, but I do want it back on record. I don't necessarily agree having the same one is the most effective or the best strategy. I would personally rather have two different professional auditing firms having two sets of eyes, if you will. Because when we had the budget deficit, we had the same internal auditor, and it didn't prevent it or stop it or have anyone flag and say, hey, there's some issues here. And I know that, City Council, in particular, Mitch Gruber, who chairs finance, has been bringing it up and brought it up at the last budget hearing as well. So I just want to assure that you all have a meeting with their external auditing team and get to know them, because you will have to work with them outside of these type of meetings anyway. And just have it officially as your strategy. So if the city comes back, we can say it was part of their strategy. They met with your team, and you know who they are. I'm sure you may already know who they are anyway, because the field is small, especially around government auditing. But if you could just put that in writing, that way we all have it, they have it, and we can combat that noise, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely, we can make
Thank
it. There's certain responsibilities when you have component auditors, and we work with a lot of large municipalities where there are several different firms essentially dealing with the same reporting entity, and even at the city of Buffalo. So we do the audit for the city there, and the school district has a different auditors on the external audit side. We work with the Buffalo schools on the internal audit side. So there's required communications, but we're very comfortable working with other audit firms, and we do know the particular firm with the city as well. Yep.
Any other commissioners or anyone on the board have any questions? Any additional questions?
Okay. All right, we'll proceed more into the, where we see the risks, where the recent developments are out there. I mentioned earlier related to the pandemic relief aid. So a lot through the American Rescue Plan, large amounts of federal funding came into school districts. The Education Stabilization Fund, that is a federal program that essentially umbrellas all of these programs. It has been designated as high risk within the uniform guidance. So the federal guidelines designated as high risk, so it will be looked at every year as an audit step for compliance. So we anticipate that will be the same case this year for your June 30th, 2023 year end. And then outside of more on the internal control standpoint, cybersecurity is an increasingly risky area on not only the public sector, really across many sectors, but what we've seen in a lot of the agencies that are listed here, whether related to a large government like a county, right down to the city level, school districts, everybody kind of partnered together and said, the prevalence of these cyber attacks on the public sector needs to be brought to the attention of boards, those charged with governance management, to kind of team up again and say, do we have the steps in place? Are we prepared if this happens? It's almost a matter of when, not if. How prepared are we to handle a cyber attack, and how much of an interruption will it be on not only our the services we provide, which are of utmost importance with the school district, of course, also the financial side. So can we operate within our major departments? So this is more of an assessment, and we're going to look in this area of how ready is the school district to handle a potential cyber attack. So certainly a big area. And then one area that's not listed, but what we've seen recently in the public sector especially, staffing and turnover has become a big issue. And that certainly has a big impact on when you look at the internal control processes. When there's a lot of knowledge that walks away with a retirement or an unanticipated turnover, that can have a significant impact on your operations. And we've seen that more and more as an issue in recent years. So that's another area that we'll be looking at as well. Certainly from the accounting standpoint, Government Accounting Standards Board, they issue a number of new standards each year. There's about 3 that are actually effective for the year ended June 30th, 2023. So we'll be having discussions during our planning process with management to see and evaluate the impact of these new standards. The one that jumps out is GASB, I can't see it, but GASB 96, the IT subscription-based arrangements. So this is looking at your contracts or arrangements with subscription-based IT software. So, I anticipate there's a lot of those types of arrangements out there. We'll get together with management during our planning process, see what's out there, and evaluate the impact on your financial statements.
What does GASB stand for?
Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
Great, thank you.
Great question. Yes, I know. Not everybody deals with that every day like us. It takes it. So moving on, as we kind of get into more of the specific strategy areas, Corey will take you through kind of the key risk areas that we see in the financial statements.
So we highlighted a couple of key risk areas in the audit strategy. The audit strategy is subject to change based on when we come in and look at the controls and processes of the district, but this is a good starting point outlining what types of audit testing we'll do in some of these areas. So the first area is cash and investments. That's obviously a lot of risk there with theft and fraud, one of the largest assets on the district's balance sheet. So what we do for the cash and investment balances, we'll do external audit confirmations. So we'll confirm those balances with the bank, and that serves as like our external audit evidence. We also look at those June 30th bank recs throughout the year. We look at how those are put together, who reviews them, and the controls and processes through that process. And then lastly, part of cash, we also look at the collateral levels. So we look at to make sure the district is properly collateralized over that FDIC $250,000 amount. And then moving on to the next slide, we highlight the receivables and revenue as the next largest risk area. This is another large asset on the district's balance sheet, and obviously cash receipts, there's a risk of misappropriation with those as well. So part of our testing is looking at these controls and processes surrounding the recording of, got it. Nope, too far. Okay. There we go. So we look at the controls and processes surrounding how those cash receipts are recorded and how revenue is accounted for. We'll also look at end of the year, what we call a cutoff test. So we'll look at some items of cash receipts after year end and test for possible inclusion in those receivable balances and the due from other governments to make sure that those are appropriately captured for the year. We look at the total receivable balance. Like I said, it's a large balance on the balance sheet. So we look at reconciliations of what makes up those balances and make sure that they're properly classified and reported. And then lastly, we look at, analytically, we look at the receivables balance and we look at those compared to prior year. And then for expenditures and purchases, we'll look at that compared to prior year. And we'll also look at that with the budget and see how it stacks up to how the budget was put together. And then similarly, the next item is accounts payable, accrued liabilities, and expenditure recognition. So this is on the purchasing side of things. We're really looking at the risk of any unauthorized expenses or any unrecorded accounts payable. So we perform similar type procedures on the payable side. We look at those disbursements that are paid after year end to make sure those payable balances are appropriate, and we test for completeness and existence for those. And then lastly, we do similar, the balance sheet we'll test analytically, and then we'll also test the purchases and compare that to the budget that the district adopted. And on to the next slide, I'll turn this federal and state grants over to Schwartz, the compliance specialist, so he'll touch on what areas and how we test for that part of the audit.
Do any of the colleagues have any questions prior to her leaving? Okay, no questions, thank you.
And the fourth area that we look at is the large federal and state grants, compliance with those grants. So when you look at federal awards that are received by the district, we'll take a look at the uniform guidance, which governs over those grants. They govern over all federal awards, and they provide a guidance on what the district should follow and how those federal awards should be expended, and any kind of other requirements that they have as far as like reporting and any kind of expenses that you have regarding to if you are purchasing equipment and all those other items. They provide guidance surrounding all those expenses to let you know what's allowable and what's not allowable. So with that, we take a look every year at federal awards that are expended, and we decide what programs are risky for that year, and those programs are usually tested. So the uniform guidance provides us with a list of high-risk programs every year, and this year, the Education Stabilization Fund, as Matt mentioned earlier again, is one of the programs that's listed on there as one of the high-risk programs. And any program that has not been tested in the past 2 previous audits, we will usually take a look at if they meet a certain threshold, if they are considered a high-risk A. So if they have, for the district, I believe last year, the A threshold was around $3 million, $3.9 million. So any programs that had not been tested in the previous 2 years, that the expenses exceeded $3.9 million, we will take a look at them and see if they are high-risk A's or not low-risk A's, and we'll test them and make sure that all the funds expended were in compliance with the uniform guidance. And any questions?
Any questions for any commissioners? Thank you.
And I'll just finish up talking about the last 5 other areas that we have listed. So capital assets of the district, so your buildings, equipment, vehicles, infrastructure. We'll look at those asset balances, and we'll look at additions and depreciation and disposals, and we'll test a sample of those, make sure that those procedures are in place. And then we also look at fund balances. So we'll look at GASB number 54, as well as GML, which is General Municipal Law, which outlines how districts can use fund balance and the spending and what needs to be done in order to spend those fund balances. And then we also look at the classifications of fund balance to make sure that those are appropriately classified. And then lastly, we have testing that we perform over long-term and contingent liabilities. So your OPEB, the other post-employment benefits, the workers' compensation of the district, and also those self-funded accrued liabilities is another area we look at. Now, before we move on to different areas, are there any other questions for risk areas?
Any commissioners have any other questions at this time?
Thank you, Patterson. And I apologize, it just popped in my head, but I wanted to clear with the super first. So one of the things that we've had large conversations around is our reconfiguration of bringing middle schools back and looking at pre-K 6. So my question was, if, when he has his meeting with you all, if he can share with you some of the buildings that have been identified that we may be returning, and so forth, so that when you're doing your your random sample selection, it doesn't include buildings and schools that they're not going to be on, essentially.
Okay,
So
yep.
none of those decisions have been made yet, but I know that there's some ideas and kind of a timeline that we've discussed around when we make those determinations and so forth. But I do feel, I don't want to say ingenuous, but it would not be fully accurate if we selected schools or buildings, right, that we may be returning, and then they're part of this audit, and at the end of the year, there's been votes and changes, and they're no longer on after a certain date. So just making sure that that conversation happens between you two so that you know where to pull the sample from.
Okay, yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. We can make a note of that, too.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if there are any other questions, I'll turn it back to Matt. He'll talk about audit timing, and then any other areas we have.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and these are really kind of the preliminary key risk audit areas. A lot of the areas that we will cover, again, it's subject to those conversations and more of the specifics of the school district. So these are the key areas, but not the all-inclusive list. So as far as an audit schedule, these are based on conversations with management as far as, when certain information was expected. So just to lay out basically our schedule or our planning list. Our planning and preliminary testing has already started with those initial conversations, exchange of information and documents, but we wanted to keep it, especially being that it's the first year, we wanted to keep it flexible. We understand that certain information is going to require us to be in person. Some of it can be exchanged through email and other means electronically. So it's a wide period of time, June to September. We're not going to be doing 3 months of preliminary work, but we wanted to be flexible so we could accommodate the district as far as, investing that extra time that it takes the first year to gain an understanding of your processes, meet all the key members of the staff, and really, get to know the district through that first period. That should put us in a really good position by September to begin on September 8th with the primary field work. So this is when your year-end records will be available and ready for audit, and we can come in and do those substantive testing areas that we talked about earlier. That is anticipated to go until about October 6th, and at that point, we should be in a position where we can review those financial statement schedules that are needed for the city's financial statements. So to a lot of the points that were made earlier, that communication needs to happen earlier on with the city and the city auditors to, stay on the same page as far as coordinating these dates. But we anticipate that by the 6th and no later than the 13th. And then as far as the actual draft financial statements for the district, we anticipate having those available for management's review on November 3rd. We will provide, as requested, assistance in preparing those financial statements. We did talk about that during the RFP process. We do that for a lot of our clients, so we will be available throughout that process to provide that assistance to the district and work along with you in preparing those draft statements. And then as far as potential dates for exit conferences, we can certainly talk about that as the process goes. I think you have the schedules from prior years as far as when you expect those meetings to occur. We'll remain flexible on our end, but we can put those on the calendar a little bit later as we go. And then a couple of closing areas that we clarify as part of our audit plan and some of our requirements. These are two areas that are really the foundation of an audit, the first being independence. So this is to clarify to the audit committee that all of the staff that are assigned to the audit engagement right up to the partner level, we are free of conflicts of interest with the district. So we are independent and able to be objective in performing the audit. And that's a requirement for our auditing standards to provide that opinion on your financial statements. And then one other consideration is, again, part of our standards is to have conversations around fraud and its impact on the financial statements. So we did include if it's something that a member or management is not comfortable talking about today, we did include our contact information. If you're aware of any fraud out there that could have an impact on the audit, please reach out to us. It is going to significantly impact our audit plan, so we do need to know that information in accordance with our standards. But also as part of our process, we do conduct interviews and inquiries regarding fraud within our audit. So that sums up our overall audit plan. Again, it was great to meet everybody here today. We love being introduced to the district. Our early observations of working with management have been all positive. We feel like you have a very good entity and staff here at the district, so we're looking forward to getting started and having a very positive relationship with the district. Any questions, we certainly are available at this point to address.
Any of my colleagues have any additional questions for them? No further questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Can I have a motion for Resolution 729 to accept the correction? Can I have a motion for Resolution 728 to approve the audit plan?
So
Am I
moved.
correct?
Second.
It's moved by Commissioner Malloy, seconded by Vice President LeBron. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Commissioner Simmons, are you in? Would you like me to assist you?
I'm getting it.
Okay, no problem.
Do you want me to wait on this or move along?
Just a moment, we're not yet done yet. Commissioner Patterson, I don't have your vote recorded. There we go.
I don't see it up on the screen here, so you're
Okay,
going to have
would
to.
you like me to record your vote?
Yes, please.
All set, 6-0.
Move forward. Okay. Did you want to give a Auditor General update?
First of all, I wanted to just thank Drescher for coming. We are all set. We have received and formally accepted your plan, so thank you so much for joining us this evening. We look forward to working with you. Thank you. Good night. So a couple of just small things. I know we have already a member of staff, actually Carrie Couples, our Director of Accounting, who's actually been responsible for the act for year after year. And I did meet with Drescher for our initial planning meeting, and we actually had an excellent and very cohesive meeting. I think it was almost as if it wasn't a new set of auditors, so it was really wonderful to get started with required schedules, see the similarities with the things that Freed had requested, et cetera. One thing, just to make sure there's an assurance for the board, as it relates to timing, which was a factor that kept coming up again, what we did was we took a look back from 2001 audit, and we looked at the 2021 as well as the 2022 audit, and looked at the timing and schedules and the dates that certain schedules were sent over to the city, as well as the various dates that we coordinated on this side. And the timing schedule was included in the presentation this evening, is actually meets or exceeds those dates. So we would have the documents, and our plan is to have them prior to what we've had in the past, so that there isn't any issues with timing. But I did want to assure the board that we very much took seriously and have taken seriously the fact that timeliness is of the essence, and we don't have any concerns in that particular area. But I did want you to know that we took the time to do that. The other item that I did want to note is, in accordance with the standards, of course, Drescher Malecki will be meeting with Freed Maxick, and they have worked with them in the past, just to make sure that there is a smooth transition and they'll be able to see schedules, et cetera. So that also is happening. To talk about some of the work that OAG is performing at this time, I just want to touch on a couple of items. First is the athletics audit. We have sent and opened up that audit. It was included in the monitor's plan. The official opening has taken place. We've received numerous documents. Actually, this past week, we've started documenting processes, and the intent is for us to get through really the processes and have an understanding internally where we're at, so that to the extent agreed upon procedures are needed to perform the audit work, we at least have an understanding of the control environment so that we can direct those agreed upon procedures to get the value that the organization would require for the athletic area. So that is done. We actually have identified, Freed, actually our prior auditors are willing to do agreed upon procedures should we require them for this particular audit area. They have the bandwidth to do that if we're not able to do that body of work. So that is an opportunity. As it relates to the graduation audit that I know is always on the top of everyone's mind, we are formalizing, we're in our follow-up process. I've of course met and had an initial meeting with the various leaders in these particular areas as that work continues, and we are formalizing as far as a detailed review in that. So the next time I come to you, obviously, probably prior to our next audit committee, we'll have another update probably in the next month or so regarding where we've come. Most of the recommendations would be, for the most part, have hit the deadline or the due date inside of that audit, and hopefully you'll be able to see a number of the recommendations and improvements administration has been working on. We might have lost a little time as far as we had a transition, and so there's going to be some level of understanding of some adjustments that might have been made based upon the leadership changes. But we've been pleased to see just the efforts that have happened in order to do that graduation work, and that's forthcoming, and that work is starting. In addition, we have a transportation audit we've completed. We are actually in the final review and reporting phase of that audit, and we're looking at various elements such as safety and kind of how we do business, discipline, et cetera, all within the area of transportation. And so that work is finishing up. We would expect over the next several weeks we will have a final report on that area as well. Another job that is being completed is our attendance audit. We know it's critical to, students can't learn if they're not at school. So that is a job that we're actually finalizing the field work, and that job also is coming to an end. And that's allowing us to really get a handle on how we are running from a organizational perspective, the oversight body of attendance. More so than what schools individually are doing, but how the central attendance function is supporting schools and ensuring that we have procedures and guides in place for that. So that is really a critical thing. The last area that we're doing some work is Oracle planning for the implementation. Currently, we have been having numerous meetings with administration as it relates to a number of areas within Oracle, things such as reporting, roles, access, what exactly we're actually configuring and how configurations are working within the system. So that body of work is going on. Included in that is, as we've looked at the possible need to cover the athletics audit, or at least have agreed upon procedures, which we identify the procedures, and the body to do the work is taking place with this outside firm. We also have an additional support such as that through Oracle, where there's an Oracle expert at Freed as well, who's able to support any technical assistance if we do need it for the internal work that we're doing. It both makes the job much cheaper, but also gives us that extra technical resource if there's a particular area that we need. All of that is still within my existing budget and actually below the threshold for a formal RFP process. But I did want to let you know that that is in place to move forward with the plan. The other item that I did want to share with you is we had included in board docs and listed up above is the Student Activity Funds Administration Audit. And I see, are you able to move? Because I see the clicker's way over there. Should I get the clicker or are you good? Okay, thank you. I'm like, oh, it's over there. So Student Activity Funds Administration, and the reason why we did this work, if you recall last year at the end of our financial audit with Fried Maxick, we had a management letter comment as it related to student activity funds or extracurricular funds. These are funds raised for the benefit of kids, by the kids, and they decide how that money's being spent. Generally your clubs and things such as that. I don't know if you're aware, but as it relates to in school buildings, if there is a group of students who are interested in having a club or a particular topic, I believe it's like maybe 5 or more students are interested in, and they can find a advisor, et cetera, they can petition to start a club and to be able to support a particular area of interest that the students might have. Because we had a management letter comment, what is customary and appropriate is before you get to the next financial audit, you do want to make sure that the organization has truly addressed those financial concerns. So in this administration audit, there were another number of improvements that needed to happen. The reason last year we received a qualified report was because there were instances where documentation was not available to support some of the transactions they had selected. And there was an instance where a fundraiser was not approved by the principal when it had taken place. Those were the issues that came forth that caused us to have a qualified report. So we really wanted to make sure the timeliness of us getting this work done in time for management to make any corrective actions and ensure the actions that were needed to happen prior to Drescher coming forth and making their selections. It made it critically important. I just want to make sure you realize we did get that body of work done. So we met with management a few months back. Possibly, I think it was two months ago, to identify the concerns and really look at the control environment to ensure the schools had the understanding and were doing the right things for the compliance purposes. So within this audit and the administration, it really is a question of improving and strengthening our control environment. A considerable amount of work has been done by the finance organization. We are reconciling the activity funds on a monthly basis, because that was one of our gaps where we're asking someone in a school who might not have a financial background to reconcile a cash account. And so that's why it's centrally done in the finance organization, and we then push it back to the schools where the head secretary is looking and seeing, okay, yes, these are my transactions, this is what's going on. The great thing about that, some years ago, we have a central software program. We have visibility to all of the monies that are happening in the school in these clubs, and because it's cash-based, it's very important for those types of things to happen. Also included in this work, we also took the time to ensure that our finance team actually is reaching out to schools saying, okay, great, we have a process for clubs and you should tell us about clubs. I want to know about all the cash that you're collecting in the school and what you're doing. Because that's really where you find those oopsies in a sense, because you don't know what's going on. There's no way to register it. And so there is kind of a census that they're just completing, and we are very pleased that they were able to get that done, because we were really concerned that there might be cash out there. You usually don't know you have a problem until after it's happened, and then it's like, oh wow, there was money for that? So we really wanted to ensure that is happening as well. So the report has been on board docs, but it really is looking for a repository for procedures, ensuring training's happening. We've had a lot of turnover, so it was a very timely comment from Drescher to talk about when you're dealing with staff changes and turnovers and shortages. It is very difficult with that the clerical and head secretary transition. They're called to be the central treasurer in the schools. So with transition and new people in those roles, it makes it very difficult to ensure the controls are where they need to be. So that has been a real challenge. And so one of the things we're really pleased that the current accounting team has been working on is We want them to, on a quarterly basis, reach out and say, okay, I want to know if there's been any changes in this particular role. So they're proactively training so that we don't get to the end of the year and can't produce the papers. So we're really working hard, and we really believe for this upcoming year, we're working to not have a qualified opinion. We really want to have that unmodified opinion. So I've been pleased with the progress that has been made. We're improving documentation, et cetera. But I think critical to this has been us completing this audit prior to year end so they can start that work and really working proactively with them, and them jumping on top of this and getting into some of these things that we asked them to do so that we can strengthen the control environment. So I'm very pleased with the progress, and I'm hopeful, but I really believe we might be able to get that unmodified opinion, so I'm pretty pleased with that. So that, in theory and in spirit, is what's going on. The general topics are topics we've seen before for the most part, having procedures, documentation, making sure everyone knows and understands what they're required to do. If you're going to have a fundraiser, is it approved? Is there a profit and loss statement? Is there a budget? We shouldn't be selling things if we don't have an inventory of what we're selling and we can't keep track. Because there are times where, you know, we do the big candy bar sell. You got a bunch of candy bars, you passed them out to a bunch of kids. Well, candy bar, they taste pretty good. So then how are you going to handle the fact that somebody just ate a half a box of candy bars and they don't have money to pay you back? So we really want to make sure those types of things we're managing so that we're not, 2 years later, we find a bill showing up in accounts payable saying you guys owe us for candy. So those are the types of things we really want to tie down. But that is what this body of work is, and that is the audit report that I brought for you this evening, as well as the other work that's going on. Any questions in that area? Wonderful.
No, I have a question, but I was just,
Go ahead, President.
yeah, so the attendance audit, does that include attendance in the classrooms? Because what we just learned earlier this evening, they can be at school but not be in classes. They could be skipping classes. And we just, observed in another meeting that if you're not in the classroom, that has an impact on your grades. And we were looking at some marking periods. So the absentee audit includes when they are not in classes?
So it's kind of related, because the first step of that is how we're handling attendance and what are we doing. So we have some back office processes, and one of the things we looked at is when you get to the attendance manual and the governing guidance that we're providing to schools saying, this is how we want you to treat this. And so, for example, if we think a few years back, at what point do you communicate with parents and say, this student's not in this class? So when you get the elementary level, obviously you're generally dealing with one main teacher who has the kids for most of the day except for the specials. So that teacher is not going to be taking attendance throughout the day, because generally if they're there at the beginning of the day, they can generally account for them, and it's not as difficult as when you hit your secondary, where within the first few minutes of the class is when they're going to be recording whether or not the student's there. Then you have to look at the configuration at the school on what are the actions they're taking. Is it a call home within the so many minutes of missing the class? Obviously, the challenge is we want to get kids in class and we want students to learn, but at the same time, we don't want to frustrate parents calling them all the day long. So we have to balance within each school and how they configure at what point is that call taking place and what does that guidance look like.
But from the audit perspective, what does that mean?
So
or can we do it? Maybe it's not, it may not be contained within this particular audit, but I'm wondering if that's something that we need to really look at, auditing that whole piece of them not being in the classroom. And, what that, well, I mean, it already is a telltale sign of academic achievement.
Absolutely.
With not being in the class. So that may not even be a poignant question, but I thought I would bring it up.
We'll let Dr.
No,
Caruso comment.
it's a great question. I think we could pull from the administration side how students are performing in attendance with grades, right? We could pull how many times they're out of a class, what their grade, what grade they're achieving, and look at some correlation between that versus, I think what you're saying is someone comes to first period but then skips the other 8 periods, right?
Right.
A day, but they're there present for the whole day, but absent in potentially 8 other classes. But we could pull some information from the
So
other side on that.
we have looked at some of that data. I just want to touch on that. Commissioner Simmons, did you want to comment first before I
No,
finish?
continue. I'm letting him know I'm on.
Yes. So we have looked at some of the data as it relates to attendance information, but what I really want to affect, so when you think about the work that we try to do, we need to make sure the governing controls in place. If a student is missing from class within the first 10 minutes, what do you do? And have we been clear about how that's to work across the district at all schools and test that against what's going on? That's the way we normally try to test that. So if it's not clear enough what our expectation is and all of the controls we put in place, at what point? If you're talking about specials and they're going to gym, if the gym teacher has no responsibility to take attendance until the end of the day, so the kid who skips gym, how do you know? And it's interesting because it's not until the teacher comes back to get their kids from gym, I'm thinking elementary at this point, they come back and they're saying, hey, wait, where's Beatrice? You just realize you're missing a kid. You know what I mean? That's when they notice, whereas the gym teacher might not have taken the attendance quite yet because they didn't know they were in before that class had started. So the first phase and the most critical we try to look at is, what are we telling people? How do we manage this? What is the governance we want in place across the district? Then we can manage to that inside of buildings and looking at the data and how we're handling it. Does that help?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. And that may be where you are at this point, but I'm thinking that that information, in terms of how it affects academic achievement,
Absolutely.
more so, even more so than being in the class per se, but we know if you're being, not necessarily, well, monitoring that, but the connection that it has to academic achievement. And that's what we noticed when we looked at some of the absences.
Yeah.
That, the grades were going down. So we could discuss it more.
But we'll make sure that
Yeah.
you can see the work done in that particular area as we finalize this
Yeah.
audit, okay?
Thank you.
Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you, Commissioner Patterson. Yeah, along those lines, I agree, President, with what you're expressing as far as we know with the overall general attendance to school, just looking at that tier 1, 2, and 3, those interventions and what we're doing to get kids back into the buildings. But to your point, when you see report cards where the classes are, like, how does a child miss 50 classes for English or what have you? And obviously, as you said, that seat time correlates to an actual, to the actual grade, the achievement in that classroom. I guess what I'm trying to get to is, I would love to see a tier 1, 2, and 3 approach with the classroom attendance as well. Like, what are the interventions and solutions, and how are we addressing children that are not showing up to their classroom? And I would love to see that broken down by grade level. So when we looked at one other report, it showed, of course, that dip in 9th grade attendance. We know that's where the wraparound needs to happen. But what are we doing to provide interventions for students who are chronically missing classes on those levels? And what does that average out across our schools?
Absolutely, thank you.
Any other commissioner have any questions? I'd like to I have a question, I should say, for the superintendent. I know there's a policy and protocol around each instructor or teacher that they have to take attendance within a certain amount of time. Could you speak relative to that?
Yeah, so teachers have the responsibility to make sure they're submitting attendance, and they sign quarterly that they've submitted attendance, and they take an attendance oath as well, but they have to submit attendance within the first 15 minutes of when class starts, every period and at the start of the school day.
Thank you. Let me sign back onto my laptop and we'll continue in just a minute.
Mr. Chair, would you like a motion to accept the student activity
Yes.
funds report? If so, I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion?
I restarted, so.
No problem, I can take your vote.
Okay.
Are we going to do?
All
a
in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
You may have to manually.
That's no problem. Yep. Does anyone else need assistance?
No, we just popped that.
Mine did.
Sorry.
Open your agenda.
There it is.
All set, I have all votes in.
Okay. Right, where am I at? You did this, right?
We're done.
Okay. All right, bullet 6, executive session. There is no executive session planned for this evening. Let's see, we already went into executive session earlier. Would all members remember to complete the board survey? And the next audit committee meeting is scheduled for October 3rd, 2023. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Vice
Second.
President LeBron, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
So the policy committee was scheduled to start immediately after. The expectation was it would be at 6:15. It's now 6:30. Would anyone like a 5-minute recess for, so before?
You can go,
No, I mean, I want to give everyone the same opportunity. So how about, before I convene the policy committee, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Good evening, welcome back to the June 6th Policy Committee meeting of the whole. We are starting a little bit late. That's the inevitable aspect of being stacked behind another meeting, but I appreciate your patience in staying with us either online or here in person. As always, I start my meeting with a motion to approve the agenda. Today's agenda has moved unfinished business a little higher on the agenda so that we can do presentation of the Code of Conduct recognition and to move that Code of Conduct first thing. So those who are here only for that can go home afterwards. I have a motion from Commissioner Patterson
Second.
to approve the agenda, seconded by Commissioner LeBron.
No, Simmons. Right?
LeBron. It was the first voice I heard, sorry. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. There are no speakers on the agenda tonight. Item 3 on our standing agenda is to approve the minutes of May 2nd. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
I have a motion moved by Commissioner LeBron, second by Commissioner Patterson. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We have no NISBA policy updates, which brings us to recognition of members of the Code of Conduct Committee. I'm going to come down to the podium to read off their names and greet them. And anyone, if you would like to stay seated, you can, or if you would like to join me in the front to form an assembly of handshakers.
How many people are here?
So I'd like to start. Is this mic open? Is the mic hot now? Okay, thank you. The first person we'd like to recognize is our co-chair, who is our student representative. Beatrix, won't you come up? Beatrix. Beatrix Ulmer Martin, we're presenting to you, presented by the Board of Education and the Superintendent of Schools in recognition of your partnership and leadership as co-chair of the Code of Conduct Committee for the 22-23 school year. Would you like to say a couple words? No. Well, in that case, won't you just allow my colleagues to recognize you? And you came all by yourself? You don't have family? No. Okay. All right.
Congratulations.
Okay. Thank you so much, Beatrix. We have 3 other people who are able to attend today. Robert Allen. What's that? You're representing?
That's an old story.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Yep, my pleasure. Hey, how are you? Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Desiree Richmond. Thank you so much for all your hard work, Desiree. Yeah. Okay. And finally, Demario Strickland.
It was when I was in G.
So this, so there were many, many more members of the committee, and including members of the community. Those are the folks that were willing and able to come out tonight, and we appreciate you all. And the best thing we can do to show our appreciation is to get back to work and actually move that policy out of committee. So. So under item 4 on our agenda, in board docs, we have track changes and clean copy versions of the Code of Conduct, and Charisma is going to make a presentation for us, PowerPoint presentation for us.
Thank you. Good evening. So currently, as Commissioner Powell has said, there were a number of committee members. So right now on your screen, you're seeing those committee members we had that included both district staff and community members and parents and students. And so the policy roadmap for this review, this policy went to the Code of Conduct Committee for them to look at for recommendations, and then it came back to Policy Committee. And so we did meet every 2 weeks to review it first when it came out of the Code of Conduct Committee, and then when it came from the public hearing that we had back on April 27th. And so part of that subcommittee included executive cabinet, general counsel. We even had a couple of our Code of Conduct Committee members attend as well as, of course, myself and Commissioner Powell. And so just as a reminder, overall recommended changes. And so from the last time this was public, which was on April 27th, the things you see highlighted in yellow, both on the track change document and in the clean copy version, are the things that are new since April 27th. There are still gender-neutral language. The SROs was removed to replace school safety officers / personnel. Restorative practice language highlighted more. Reorganization of areas for readability. Provides more opportunities for partnership, collaboration between school staff and parents. Focus on increasing guidance and accountability to help students succeed in a positive school climate. Consistent language throughout the document, and then the decision of should versus shall versus must. And so these 4 sections received major changes, including guidance principles, shared accountability, rights, responsibilities, and expectations, prevention, intervention, progressive discipline. The matrix received a lot of the changes. One of the biggest things is that the matrix now has an index included. So when you're looking for a specific disciplinary, when you're looking at a specific behavior violation, you can go to the index and identify what you're looking for, so you can go to the page. Also, the matrix also now will be aligning with what internally what is used by administration, so that way it's consistent throughout the district when schools are assigning suspensions. And then appendices C, due process, D, student with disabilities, and the glossary were also received major updates. And so for next steps with this policy actually will not follow the normal process where it takes about 3 months. Instead, this would be expedite it in a way. The goal is by the June 29th business meeting for it to be voted on by the board so that so that it could be implemented for the upcoming school year starting July 1st. And that is all I have, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you. So as Charisma said, there was a goal to expedite this rather than to take several months in the first and second reading. And perhaps you've heard the expression, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So what we'd like to do, this Charisma's initiative, is to have a motion to waive the, to declare our intent to waive the policy management policy
So motion.
2410. Moved by President Elliott,
Second.
seconded by, I was gonna assign it to Beatrice because she was she was right behind the, President Elliott in the primary motion. So Charisma, you got somebody down there, right, for a motion in the second? Yes. Any discussion? Comments? Statements of approval, disapproval? Go ahead, President Elliott.
Yeah, I don't have anything planned to say, but I am just so proud and thankful for Commissioner Powell, your leadership on this, and just, you know, going step-by-step detailed in bringing this policy to us for our approval. You know, we had a number of people from the community that participated in this. And of course, we've had a policy before, but now it's updated, and the community, you know, really charged us to make sure that we get this done and that is implemented with the fidelity. I think that there are people in the community that took exception to it because we did not implement the previous one with fidelity. And so I'm so excited about the opportunity and the work that the community did on this. And thank you very much for your leadership on this, Commissioner Powell. I'm excited about it, and I think that we've got to document that our district with the leadership of our superintendent to ensure that this policy is implemented with fidelity. So thank you, Commissioner Powell.
You're welcome. Any other statements in support of the expediting the policy? Hearing none. All in favor of declaring our intent to expedite the policy?
So,
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. May I have a motion to actually forward the code of conduct out of committee?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we're going to get everybody in on the action. Moved by Commissioner Simmons, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Last chance to make any, like, soapbox statements about the code of conduct policy? Forever hold your peace. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Are we doing it online as well?
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right. For those of you who are here just because you're members of the Code of Conduct Committee, especially our co-chair, the student, Beatrix, thank you. If you want to leave now, the exciting part's over. And we appreciate you being here. Okay, now we have new business. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 policies. These are essentially, this is the, you know, sweeping up the bits and pieces that got left behind from previous sections that needed more time and attention, and I'm going to have Charisma go through the next presentation.
Commissioner Powell,
Ma'am.
just one other thing. I forgot to acknowledge Charisma in her work on the
Oh,
on the
absolutely,
plan. So
absolutely.
please forgive us for that, Charisma. We thank you so much for that work, because I know it's, you know, that's detailed work also, that you actually got to do all the work, so, and putting all that together. So just wanted to, you know, say thank you for your hard work as well. Thank you, Commissioner Powell.
You bet, you bet. Charisma, can you advance to slide 2 just for a minute? I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege to say that since my work is nearly done, I have one request, and that is, for this whole time we've used this roadmap, and for several years now, I have believed that it shouldn't be a curved road, it should be a roundabout, because it is such an iterative process that we often have to cover ground that we've already covered once before as new constituents and stakeholders bring their issues to light. We have to go back to the beginning on some policies and work that new language in. So if anyone has copious spare time, wants to do some updating of the graphic, that would just tickle me to pieces. Okay, Charisma, why don't you go ahead and take the floor now? Thank you.
No problem. So these policies follow the same roadmap. And so, Right. So there were various administration who weighed in on the different policies based on their expertise. For the first policy, community involvement, Policy 1200, NESBA recommended that this policy can be removed as it offers little meaningful policy guidance. And so this policy has been significantly updated to align with the district's community schools vision, including recommending the policy name change to community schools. Pathways to High School Success, Policy 4090, NESBA has recommended that this seems to be okay. Please review carefully to ensure it reflects current practice of the district and intent of the board. It is being recommended to rescind because it will become redundant to Policy 4750. High school to higher education institutions Policy 4095. NESBA said that this policy is okay. The committee has decided that the updated information to align with the commission's regulation. Alternative and homebound instruction, Policy 4327. The board may wish to include language regarding the amount of time for students to be taught and address reentry after prolonged absence. And so the committee has included language to align with NESBA's policy update. Grading systems, Policy 4710. Promotion and retention of students, Policy 4750. Graduation ceremonies, Policy 4772, and use of animals in science instruction, Policy 4850, are all new policies to the district, with 3 of them being part of the state monitor's academic plan and the graduation audit. And then finally, the motion to forward transportation of students and others, Policy 8400. This policy seems to have all the key elements, but as it is such a lengthy document, the board is encouraged to separate it into separate documents. And so the policy remains as one document, and there was very minor changes. And so these policies are expected to be voted on during the August business meeting. And Commissioner Powell, that's...
Thank you. Yes, so the goal is to keep these on the regular track. So because these are so disparate from different sections of the policy manual, we'll just go through them one at a time. Starting with Policy 1200. Do I have a motion to move this policy out of committee? Motion. Moved by Commissioner Patterson.
Second.
Second by Vice President LeBron. Discussion? Again, this is the one that's being changed to communities, to titled Community Schools. Hearing no discussion, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Are we doing electronic? Oh, there it is, okay. Again, for those of you who are watching, sometimes our cues don't all come up on all screens at the same time. The next, do we have a count?
All right, yep, we're all set now. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. The next policy, 4090, Pathways to High School Success, is recommended for rescission. We want to make that recommendation to the full board. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Malloy, second by Commissioner Simmons. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Waiting on electronic voting.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Policy 4095, High School to Higher Education Institutions Policy. Do I have a motion to advance it to the full board?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Malloy, second by Commissioner LeBron. Discussion? I'm sorry, I heard it wrong. Commissioner Simmons, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Electronic voting.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Policy 4327, alternatives and homebound instruction. Do you have a motion to advance it to the full board?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Malloy moved and Vice President LeBron seconded. Discussion. I would like to state, President Elliott, you had some concerns about there being a minimum of 2 hours per day for home instruction. As it turned out, there was a change by the state to make it 4 hours, so you got your wish. So just or up to 4 hours is the new state standard. So, eventually all things come around, right? Any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Electronic voting.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Policy 4710, grading systems. I believe this is one of the ones that was driven largely by the monitor's report. Do I have a motion? I've moved by Commissioner
Second.
Patterson, second by Commissioner Malloy. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Electronic voting.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Policy 4710, grading systems. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by President Elliott.
But I think you just did 4710 is 4750.
I'm sorry?
You just did 4710 is 4750.
We did grading systems. I'm sorry. 4750, that's what you're moving, President Elliott?
I thought it was moving the
I
grading
thought-
system back and move it.
Thank you for that. We have a motion for 4750 from
Second.
President Elliott, seconded by Vice President LeBron. Promotion and retention of students, again, driven by the monitor's report. Discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Electronic voting.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, that brings us to policy 4772, graduation ceremonies. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Commissioner Simmons, followed by Commissioner Malloy. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Electronic voting? Two more to go, folks.
Just waiting on one more, Commissioner.
It's taking forever to pop up, just so you know.
Gotcha. The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Policy 4850,
Motion.
moved by Commissioner LeBron. Second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Malloy. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Electronic voting?
Motion passes 6-0.
And finally, policy 8400, transportation of students and others.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion from Vice President LeBron and seconded by both Commissioner Malloy and Commissioner Patterson.
Commissioner Patterson can have it, that's fine.
Commissioner Patterson can have it? Okay.
I know.
Discussion.
Actually, I just want to make a comment to the listening audience, because we just did a whole bunch of motions, and all we're doing is voting to get it out of the committee, and so that's probably why you're not seeing a lot of discussion. Just, thank you, that's all.
That's right. And all board members have had an opportunity, whether they've taken it or not, to come to subcommittees where cabinet and other stakeholders have discussed the details of it. The transportation policy, of course, is one that has been commented upon by board members insofar as it affects other policies like choice and school attendance, and it's a very impactful policy. So, let's see, you have a motion and second on the record, right, Charisma?
Correct.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Electronic voting? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, even though we started late, we're finishing early. Thank you for helping us get through all of this. I hope our desire to get through it did not stymie conversation or discussion in any way.
Thanks for your work on this, Commissioner Powell.
Oh, you're very welcome. Please fill out the poll and tell me how wonderful I am. Even if I can't wrap my tongue around the words. I think the answer to item number 1 is NA, because we are following another committee. And if everyone is moving through the survey, I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Moved by Commissioner LeBron.
Second.
Seconded by everybody. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Feel free to leave when you're finished with the survey.